Welcome back to the Astropark, everyone. My name is Kwesi Akwa, and if you're a fan of observing or imaging the sun, there's a vast plethora of activities that are coming up in the not too distant future. In North America, with the upcoming annular solar eclipse this month on October 14th, a total solar eclipse next year in April, and our continued approach to solar maximum in 2024 and 2025, now is a great time to jump into the action. However, regardless of when you observe or image the sun, you can see some unique features every day due to the sun's dynamic activity. And we can see these features through specialized solar filters. So in this video, I'm going to be discussing 3 filters that are used in solar astronomy and astrophotography, as well as the different features you can see with each filter. Now, before we get started, I need to state a general warning when it comes to the sun, because solar observing and imaging can be quite dangerous if you don't understand what you're doing. So please never look at or photograph the sun through a telescope without the proper solar protection installed, because failure to do so can result in permanent damage to your eyes and equipment, and you can cause property damage in the form of fires. So make sure you do the proper research, as well as take the necessary precautions before attempting to do this. Now, with that out of the way, let's begin by talking about the first filter that most people use when they start working with the sun. And that filter is white light. A white light filter is a broadband filter that allows a broad range of visible light to pass through, cutting off at the infrared and ultraviolet ends. At the same time, the filter reduces the sunlight by about 99% so that we can observe and image the features of the sun safely. White light filters show us a region of the sun called the photosphere. The photosphere is the quote-unquote surface of the sun, where a majority of the sun's light and heat is emitted from. The average temperature of the photosphere ranges between 8,000 and 11,000 degrees Fahrenheit. There's a few interesting features that we can see on the sun through a white light filter. The biggest feature is usually the sunspots. Sunspots are the cooler regions of the sun, with an average temperature of 6,500 degrees Fahrenheit. They are formed by large magnetic fields that emanate from the convection regions of the sun, which are deep below the photosphere. The magnetic fields keep the heat below the photosphere from pushing upwards, and the result of that pressure is what gives sunspots their dark black color. Sunspots are also quite large, as they can grow to be roughly the size of the Earth and sometimes even larger. Another feature that can be seen in white light are called granules. Granules are grainy structures that are roughly 900 miles in diameter and cover the entire sun. They are the tops of convection cells, where hot gas rises up from the interior in the bright areas, spreads out across the surface, cools and becomes denser, then sinks down along the dark lanes between the granules. Each granule only lasts for about 10 to 20 minutes before it's pushed aside by a new one. Granules tend to be viewed the best in telescopes with a medium or large aperture. As for your equipment, you can use your existing telescope that you already have, whether it's a refractor, a reflector, or a Cassegrain telescope. However, the white light filter has to be mounted on the front or the back of the telescope. If you use a front mounting filter, you have the option of using either a solar film filter or a solar glass filter. Make sure the filter that's used covers the entire aperture of the telescope, and inspect the filter for any small holes or cracks before using it. If you use a back mounting filter, you'll have to use a device called a Herschel wedge. A Herschel wedge comes in the form of a star diagonal and has an internal prism where the majority of the light passes through and goes to a heat sink in the back where the heat is dissipated. The remaining light is then reflected through a series of neutral density filters before reaching the eyepiece or camera sensor. Herschel wedges can only be used exclusively with refractor telescopes, up to 6 inches in aperture. Since white light is a broadband wavelength, color cameras can be used for imaging, such as a DSLR, mirrorless camera, or a one-shot color webcam. However, it's usually recommended to use a monochrome camera when working with the sun. One popular camera is the ZWO ASI 174mm, as it has a large sensor array and the fast shutter speed, allowing you to record videos at high frame rates. After you've gained some experience using white light filters, this next filter is one that's highly requested by people due to the dazzling and explosive features you can see. And this second filter is hydrogen alpha. A hydrogen alpha filter is a narrowband filter that allows only the hydrogen alpha emission line to pass through, blocking everything else. The hydrogen alpha line is at 656 nanometers in the red portion of the spectrum. Hydrogen alpha filters show us a region of the sun called the chromosphere. The chromosphere is a layer of the sun about 250 miles above the photosphere, with a temperature between 6,700 and 14,000 degrees Fahrenheit. In the chromosphere, the hydrogen atoms are being bombarded with energy from the sun's core. When this happens, the hydrogen absorbs the incoming light. As the light is absorbed, it causes the single electron in the hydrogen atom to jump from the second orbital shell to the third orbital shell. This configuration is unstable, so the electron falls back to the second orbital shell. The transition between orbital shells is what causes the hydrogen atom to emit light, and this emission is what we see through a hydrogen alpha filter. Hydrogen alpha filters can show us some pretty dynamic features on the sun. Just like in white light, we can also see sunspots. You can also see some bright white areas around the sunspots, known as active regions. Active regions are areas where the sun's magnetic field is disturbed, and is the source of solar storm activity, such as coronal mass ejections. Another popular feature is the solar prominence. A prominence is a large plasma cloud that extends thousands of kilometers into space and then loops back into the sun. The loop is then held in suspension by the magnetic field. There are also snake-like structures that we can see face on from our point of view. These structures are called filaments. Filaments are the same as prominences but seen from above. You can also see spicules, which are tiny jets of plasma coming off of the edge of the sun's limb. Spicules only last for a few minutes but can be up to 200 miles wide. As for your equipment, one of the common ways to work with hydrogen alpha is by using a dedicated solar telescope. Companies such as Meade and Lunt make good telescopes for this, such as the Meade Coronado PST, a good entry-level H-alpha telescope, and the Modular Telescope series by Lunt that can be used for both daytime and nighttime. Dedicated solar telescopes also require 2 additional pieces of equipment that have to be used together. The first is called an etalon, which is an interface filter composed of 2 flat and parallel surfaces that are coated with a reflective dielectric layer. There's a small gap between the surfaces that allows only the H-alpha light to pass through, and the bandpass is quite narrow, measured in angstroms. The second is a blocking filter, which is a combination of several cutoff filters that provide additional safety for the user, only allowing the H-alpha emission to pass through. If you have an existing nighttime refractor telescope, you can use a device called a quark from the company called Daystar. The quark can be inserted into a standard star diagonal, and the eyepiece or camera plugs into the opposite end. The quark requires an external power source to warm up the internal components for about 10 minutes. Once it's finished, you're now ready to observe and image the sun in hydrogen alpha. Also, since hydrogen alpha is a narrowband pass, it's always recommended to use a monochrome camera for the best results. The third filter is used mostly by people who are obsessed with the sun, as they want to capture every detail possible. It's usually the last filter that you pick up, and that filter is calcium K. A calcium K filter is a narrowband filter that only allows the calcium K emission line to pass through, blocking everything else. The calcium K line is at 393 nanometers, which is within the ultraviolet region of the spectrum. Because ultraviolet is at the limit of what the human eye can see, calcium K filters are mainly used for imaging. Just like in hydrogen alpha, calcium K filters also show us the sun's chromosphere. In the chromosphere, calcium atoms are also being bombarded by energy emitted from the sun's core. When this happens, the calcium atom absorbs the incoming light. As the light is absorbed, an electron is kicked out from the outer orbital shell, causing the calcium atom to emit light and become ionized. This emission is what we see through a calcium K filter. Just like in white light and hydrogen alpha, one distinct feature we can see in calcium K are the sunspots. Another unique feature that's visible is called plage, which are bright regions found around sunspots. Plage is the French word for beaches, so they look like sandy beaches around sunspots. The last calcium K feature is the chromospheric network, which are bright regions of the sun that resemble cracked glass. The network occurs from large magnetic fields caused by supergranules, which are much larger than regular granules in white light, about 22,000 miles across. As for your equipment, you can use your existing refractor telescope with a back-mounting calcium K filter. Lunt makes these filters in star diagonal form and come in different sizes depending on your telescope's focal length. Daystar also makes a calcium K quark, and it works like the hydrogen alpha quark in terms of functionality. And since calcium K is a narrow bandpass, once again, a monochrome camera is required for the best results. So those are the 3 filters used in solar astronomy and astrophotography. What's your favorite filter to use? And what are some of the favorite features that you like to observe or image on the sun? Let me know about it in the comment section down below, and I hope you have a fun and safe experience. As always, thank you for watching AstroPark, and until next time, take care, and I wish you all clear skies.